tradition of writing for the horn where the first and third horn players play high and the second and fourth play low.
I think it's good for the audience to know that a lot of films are done simply in the computer.
What gives it that particular American quality?
It's all really short, really quick hits.
For example, at measure EM, I have quarter note, eighth rest, quarter note, eighth rest.
Please welcome music director Christopher Wilkins, our esteemed panel of judges, and our young composers Joseph Breyer, Bradley Krolig, Caleb Bancroft, and Ryan Dodge. Thank you very much for coming.
You have to think outside the box, as this is not like anything else. Originally, the idea was to help young composers, and as we continued along with this, we realized that it's not just for young composers, it's also for young musicians. And then we realized, as we did these composiums, that it's just as much for the audience as the young musicians, because whether you're a sophisticated listener or you've got a totally tin ear, everyone universally comes up and says, I learned so much from watching this.
So when I say double stops, for example, Ron, play one of your lines just as written and then add some kind of richness to it.
There's that cool little interlude he's given me. So we have the, and then I get to go. So what about, or double the octave or hit the 10th? Or if you want to add blues to the mix.
Yeah, right.
Of its own nature, it's very entertaining. Yes, it is part competition, it's part concert, it's part rehearsal session and recording session, and it's partly just a seminar in making music and how to work with an orchestra.
They're actually putting together the pieces and decomposing them, in a sense, and explaining to the audience how they work and the little nuances that make it good or maybe didn't work.
What do you think about adding some of those extra notes that Ron just did? And of course, everybody could do that. Instead of 4 strings at a time, you could have 8, or you could even have more than 8.
Well, I'm a jazz musician. I'm all for adding and embellishing.
Maybe the one suggestion I'd make is to have more of a sense of climax in the second one.
I'm really struck by the simplicity. I think it's actually very expressive in its simplicity.
Because there's so much creativity happening, and it's so exciting.
So Joe, congratulations. It's a joy to hear your piece.
My primary role, aside from conducting, is to find a way to let all the voices be heard. To really encourage the orchestra to speak from their perspective.
How's it lay out for you, Alex? One nice thing is he gives the second violin a number of the principal melodies. You go above the first violin many times. That's a way to also create a kind of richness.
Absolutely, absolutely. A lot of times second violinists tend to be sort of, not, I wouldn't say boring parts, but not exactly the most interesting, but he's managed to sort of melt both worlds together in nice harmonies, but then rise above that with some really amazing melodies. So great piece, great piece.
and then our panel of composers, professional composers, who have worlds to say.
Emotionally, which in my book is a big part of music, you nailed it.
One thing I was worried about with this piece was the fact that it never really leaves the scale that it starts in. But the fact that you end on the D major triad in 6/4 position was such a surprise.
It's wonderfully evocative music. It seems to tell a story of some kind, and I don't know if it does. Tell us about the title, The Sailor.
Well, I came up with the title after I finished the piece, so it doesn't really mean much. I was trying to come up with a title, because at that point it was still called Project 214, which was when I made it. So
I think The Sailor's better.
Yeah.
Aaron Copland loved to tell the story that he wrote all of Appalachian Spring only with Martha Graham in mind. He had no idea of the story, what it was about, or the title.
What I do is I prepare certain thoughts about each piece, perhaps a provocative question to toss out there. But in the end, it's improvisatory. It's a free event. Everybody comes because they just want to be here. And we all, including the young composers, have devoted our lives to this. And so it is a real sharing of a love.
I have a stereo mic in the center here and two left and right outriggers. Basically a small decatry is what I'm using to record the orchestra. This also will pick up the main stage. I'm the recording engineer for the event, and what I do is I record all the performances that the students' pieces, and then I edit them down and do a mix of the product, and then provide that sample for the students so that they have an actual finished product with a professional orchestra. In this setting, most of what they're hearing is going to go straight through their heads because they're so excited to hear their piece performed by a live orchestra. And this will give them an opportunity to actually go back and review some of the comments that were made by the conductor and the musicians themselves. Put up a couple spotlights, like I put a spot in the center of this section here. One of the important things is that the students are listening in a MIDI environment, and then when they get into this situation where they're actually working with a professional orchestra, they have an opportunity to hear how the balances actually work with live musicians, because in the MIDI world you can create balances that may not be conceivable with the exact instrumentation that are here.
Part of my job is tour guide for the audience, so helping them appreciate more and more how orchestral music is made.
You know, the more you understand about how the orchestra works, the more you understand about the process of composition, the more you can appreciate it.
Learning enhances the pleasure because you hear so much more, you're able to really step into it.
Bottom line is that orchestras are losing audiences, and there's no reason for that to happen. This is kind of reinvigorating things. You're not just listening to 200-year-old pieces, you know, you're listening to stuff happening now. Don't think of it as a competition. Don't think of it as a concert. This is a program which connects people to the orchestra in a way that they never imagined.